What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Week 17 edition of the DFS OGs podcast right here on RotoGrinders.com. I am your host, Chris, Beermakers Fan Prince, joined as always each and every week by my boys, my fellow OGs, Head Chopper and Notorious. Chop, let's start with you, buddy. Welcome in. How was Christmas? We got New Year's right around the corner, and Week 17, always a fun week in DFS. So how we doing, my man?
We are hanging in there, man. Just ready to kind of wind it down. It's week 17 is always so anticlimactic. And I always say that, oh man, I can't wait for it because there's a huge edge. And then we always sit down and watch the games. And I'm like, well, this is garbage because these guys are guys who are going for 40 points weren't even on my radar, even though they should have never been on my radar. Nobody's radar, but it's crazy. So I don't know. I'm looking for – it's this time of year when you really start looking forward to the playoffs and knowing what you get back to. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs. But Christmas was good, and I'm looking forward to New Year's.
Absolutely. Noto, let's get over to you, buddy. Same. How was Christmas? How was Week 16? And welcome into the pod.
Week 16 was a pretty good one. One of my better weeks of the year, so can't complain there. Christmas, a lot of fun. We always do mimosas in the morning, and that turned into shots by 12, and we were asleep by like 7 p.m. So
nice.
Pretty good day overall, and a pretty good week of NFL. So excited for the new year. Definitely excited for the playoffs. Luckily, this year it seems like there aren't as many teams mailing it in for Week 17. So hopefully we won't have as many just random names popping up for 40 fantasy points like Chop mentioned.
So you are definitely turning into an old guy, right before our eyes. I mean, me and Chop are definitely some old timers, but you, the early drinking, the shots, and then you're in bed nice and early. I mean, that's a great day right there. So Christmas here was good. Chop, I'm looking forward to the new year. I think we're all looking forward to getting rid of 2020 for sure and moving on to 2021. And speaking of moving on to 2021, we can finally reveal what we've been talking about. We've been telling you guys we have some news as far as the podcast goes, but you'll have to wait for that. We'll get to that towards the end of the pod, so stay tuned for that. But some big news we're all excited about, so we'll hit on that after we talk football. Now, the goal here in Week 17, we want to try to cover what teams have something to play for, what teams don't. You know, the motivations are really important here, and Chop nailed it. I mean, I always love this slate, but there are going to be a lot of random outliers, and we'll dig in as much as possible here. But you're going to have to continue to dig in throughout the week. We record very early in the week. We give our initial thoughts on the slate. But this is one of those weeks there's going to be news every single day, all the way up till kickoff of guys resting. So you really got to have your ear to the ground here, and we'll do our best to cover everything from our point of view here early on. So a lot of games to get to here. Every game on Sunday. The NFL's done a great job of splitting up the schedule, keeping teams that, there won't be any scoreboard watching. They've kind of kept those teams together. And then we have a Sunday night game. So 15 games to get here. So let's get to it. Let's start with one that's probably not of interest to us or a lot of people out there, the Jets and the Patriots. Patriots, small favorites here. Minor injuries on both sides. Damian Harris, questionable. Frank Gore out for the Jets. And I think you're going to see some Jarrett Stidham here if I had to guess at the quarterback position. So, Chop, we're talking about a total under 40 here. We're talking about two teams that are clearly out of it. Is there anything here for fantasy here? We can kind of skip through this game pretty quickly.
Oh, it's a tough one because, this is the biggest. This is going to be the biggest slate of the year, obviously, with all the games. So, and no Thursday, no Monday, and only one night game. Like everybody's playing except for two teams. So you're going to have a lot of spots where you just want to kind of pass and move on. And for me, this is one of them. And with that being said, this is the kind of game where a Jamison Crowder goes for those 40 points I was talking about and like ruins the day for you. And he would have never been on your radar because there's just so many players. But yeah, this is one of a few games that for me it's just a hard pass.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if anything, that's probably the play. Crowder at 5,000 on DraftKings. We've seen this Jets team play with a lot more spirit lately, winning some games they frankly shouldn't have won. And I know Derek's happy about that as his Jags now have locked in that number one pick. But a total like this, Derek, I'm just having a hard time with so many games on the slate. Maybe Crowder is a one-off. I agree with that. Maybe Jacoby Myers is a one-off, but I just don't see a lot here I'm interested in. How about you?
I have a little bit more interest in you guys. If the Patriots start Stidham, you got to think they're going to, give him a chance to have a good game. We know the Jets, they are pretty good against the run and pretty awful against the pass. So I wouldn't mind taking a shot at Stidham. He's pretty cheap. There are a lot of studs that I want to pay up for in the slate. Don't mind pairing him up with Myers. And then, I like the Jamison Crowder call. Look, the Jets, they've won the last 2 games. It's been pretty impressive. And now they're locked into the number 2 pick. So they might as well go for 3 in a row against a divisional rival. So I like Crowder. He's cheap. Perriman and Mims are close to the minimum. I know they both struggled last week, but I think this game has a little bit more appeal in large field tournaments anyway.
All right, let's get to the betting market here. We have Patriots small 3-point favorites here at home, 39.5 on that total, Derek.
Let's go Jets 3 in a row. Give me the plus points.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Jets as well. I think they win this game. New England just looked defeated last night. I think that was kind of the death nail of Buffalo doing whatever they wanted. And the Jets are, I would hate to say on a roll here, but they're playing well. So I'll go Jets plus the 3. Chop.
Oh, man, yeah. I'm doing the same thing. It doesn't make any sense what the Jets have been doing the last couple of weeks, but they're out here winning games when they shouldn't be, and got to take them because the Patriots have mailed it in.
All right, 3 for 3 on the Jets. So we'll keep track of the parlay card here, and we, as always, we'll take a look back at last week. So Noto 5-5 for you, buddy. So you're still leading the way with 87 wins. Chop, rough week, my man. Only 3 wins for you last week. So you guys were in a tie. That drops you down to 85. And I pulled out 7 wins last week, so making a late night comeback here, as they said in one of my favorite movies, Rounders. Brings me to 81 wins. So going to take a miracle for me to catch Noto here. But Noto 87, Chop 85, and I'm at 81 here entering the last week of play. As far as the consensus plays, we nailed Chicago. Pretty much rolled in that game against Jacksonville. Washington let us down. Oh, boy, Dwayne Haskins did not help us out there against Carolina. So we split on our consensus plays. But we'll see what the parlay card looks like here in week 17. All right, another game here. This one a little bit more fantasy friendly. Both teams out of it here, Minnesota and Detroit. Minnesota 7-point favorites. Detroit, we got Stafford questionable, and Kenny Golladay remains questionable. Would be shocked to see him back in that lineup here. So Noto, this one again a little bit more fantasy friendly here. No motivations on either team. Some of the local talk. Stafford was on the radio this morning, said I'm going to play. They pay me to play 16 games, blah, blah, blah. It's really the Minnesota side. Do you think we get a full game out of Jefferson, Thielen, Cousins, Dalvin Cook, or do you think these guys kind of take it easy here in this game against Detroit?
Yeah, for the Lions, I mean, if anybody's going to, get out a meaningless Week 17 game, it's going to be Matt Stafford, one of the tougher quarterbacks in the NFL. So if he is active, it'll certainly make this game a lot more appealing as a whole. Got to think Kenny Golladay is going to be out again. So if Stafford is under center, I'll have some interest in Marvin Jones. I'll have some interest in Hawkinson. And I think it makes the Minnesota side a little bit more interesting as well because the game would have more shootout potential. The problem for me, I mean, Dalvin Cook's been getting, 25-plus touches a game, but now they are officially out of the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see if they scale his workload back a little bit. There are some other running backs that we want to pay up for. So he's not going to be a priority for me, especially if Alexander Madison ends up being active. He's missed the last couple games. So for the Lions, give me the pass catchers. I like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Irv Smith if Rudolph is out again.
I mean, Chop, I really like this Minnesota side, but it's like I said in the beginning, it's going to be one of those, seeing what we can read off the tea leaves. Are we going to get a full game out of these guys? We know this is a great matchup. We saw Tom Brady throw for 400 yards almost and 4 touchdowns and a half against this team. So they have clearly quit. Running backs have been a thing all year against the Lions. So what do you think here? Do we get 100% Vikings in this one?
Yeah, I think a game like this, I'm looking at the coaching staff, and on one side you have an interim staff who's probably being told, we're not going to play Stafford, we're not going to play Golladay, so you're shorthanded. Who knows? Maybe even a guy like Marvin Jones sits. He's a veteran. So, and then on the other side, you got a guy who's, I think, still coaching for his job. So, if these players are available to play, I think he's going to run them out there for the full duration. So, yeah, I'm not much interested in Detroit at all, but I am interested in the Minnesota side. This could be one of those guys Thielen or Jefferson could be one of those guys that really crushes this slate. So I'm very interested in the Minnesota side.
Yeah, I'm with you there for sure. All right, Chop, we got Vikings favored by a touchdown here on the road, and that total at 54.5.
Yeah, I think it plays out to where it's a blowout for Minnesota.
I am going to go under. I just think the Detroit offense is going to be bad here. So even if the Vikings put up 30 something, I just don't see a Chase Daniel led offense or even a Matthew Stafford being banged up led offense doing much here. So give me the under on the 54.5. Derek.
I'll take the under as well. You kind of get that added equity if Stafford ends up being out.
All right, now we'll get into some games with some playoff implications. We'll start with Miami and Buffalo here. We mentioned Buffalo looked great in that Monday night game against New England. So Miami, here's the scenarios. They win and they're in, or if they need a loss by Baltimore, Cleveland, or the Colts. So a lot of different ways that Miami can get in. Buffalo, they're sitting right up top there. You know, they pretty much can lock up the 2 seed. We know Kansas City has already locked up that 1 seed. So there's still some motivation there for them. It still can be a home game for the Buffalo Bills here. So, Chop, this one again. Both teams have a lot to play for. The receivers are where we go for injuries. Devontae Parker remains questionable. Grant, doubtful for this game. And John Brown on the Buffalo side on the COVID list. I'd expect him to be back, but something to keep an eye on. So let's go over to you here. Should be a good game and an intriguing game. What about for fantasy? What are we digging out of this one?
This is actually pretty tough for me right here because Buffalo is one of those in between teams. I don't know what they're gonna do. That number 2 seed doesn't carry a bye week anymore, or this year at least. So they're gonna have to play in that first round of the playoffs. So are they going to kind of like there's not a lot to gain from winning this game? So are we only going to see one half out of some of these guys and then get ready for that playoff game, or are we going to see a full game and try to push for that number 2 seed, even though it doesn't really mean as much this year with the no bye week? So I'm kind of torn on the Buffalo side, and I think they really, I hate chasing points like Diggs. He's done real well this year, but boy, that was a monster game on Monday Night Football this past week. I don't know if he's going to do that back to back. I know he's capable of it, but it's just the NFL. Things level out, so. I don't know what to do with the Buffalo side, and the Miami side is okay for like a Myles Gaskin had his blow-up game. He's all right. The receivers and tight ends don't interest me a whole lot with Tua there. Maybe Gesicki is the guy. He seems to be the guy. Not interested in Tua as much. So Gaskin and Gesicki on that side, and the Bills side, I don't know, man. They're throwing me a curveball right now.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to keep in mind, I mean, they're sitting in the 2 spot now. Pittsburgh has the same record behind them. We're going to talk about the Steelers here shortly, but they've already announced Ben Roethlisberger is not going to play. Mike Tomlin said, we're still going to play. We may be missing a few guys, but that's the team that they're tied with for that 2 spot. So, yes, there's no bye, but it's still not home field throughout, but home field until you get to Kansas City. So I still think there's some importance there. But if Pittsburgh is mailing it in, then you could see a situation where maybe you only get a half out of these Buffalo guys. And they see Pittsburgh is losing, then there's no motivation to continue playing. They're still locked in to that 2 seed. So I kind of share some of that skepticism, and it would be Gaskin for me. I don't have a ton of interest in the Miami pass catchers. Tua just hasn't shown a ceiling. I mean, they had to bring in the relief pitcher. Fitzpatrick, who we've talked about, it just makes them a better team. I don't know what their plan is for the playoffs, but Tua's just not getting it done through the air. So pretty much Gaskin for me here, Noto. What about yourself?
Yeah, Buffalo. I mean, I was mad when the Tampa Bay Rays started this, trend where they brought in an opener and then had their starter play. And that's pretty much what the Dolphins are doing right now with Tua. If he gets off to a bad start, bring in Fitz to win the game. Some of his magic late in games was just incredible. That throw he made when he got hit in the face last week against the Raiders was awesome.
Unbelievable.
I like Mike Gesicki a little bit. He's only 4,200. He's been pretty good with both guys under center. And then Gaskin, like you guys mentioned, had 19 opportunities last week, 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did play on 40 snaps. Kind of think that'll go up this week in his second week back. And then the Bills side, yeah, I'm worried about them. And you just have to look at the line to, kind of think where everyone else is as well. The Dolphins are favored in Buffalo. That wouldn't be the case if the Bills needed to win this game. So I will probably not be playing anyone from Buffalo.
All right, Noto, we got Buffalo -4.5, 47.5 on the total.
All right, so I'm seeing Miami favored in a couple spots, but if we get in the 4.5, give me Miami.
I'm going to go Miami as well. So the lines are going to change from what we're giving you here, no doubt. So maybe there's some insider news on the Bills, but as of now, I'll take the 4.5 here with the Dolphins. Chop.
Yep, we gotta go with those Dolphin points. That's too much value right there. So I'm going with the Dolphins.
All right, next game we have the Ravens and the Bengals. Injury-wise, looks like just Tyler Boyd remaining questionable on the Cincinnati side. And Baltimore, very simple. You win and you're in. If not, you need a Cleveland or an Indianapolis loss to get you in the playoffs. And we know the Bengals have been out of playoff contention pretty much since day one, but they continue to play well. I mean, that game in Houston, that's the stack that you needed in DFS in Week 16. So, Noto, let's go to you here. The Ravens, big favorites. They should roll. So is this a week you have Lamar at the top of your ranks? Are we looking at those running backs? So we've finally seen some Hollywood Browns start to emerge here. We know Andrews is in play every week. So a lot of options on that Ravens side. But let's not forget Cincinnati. They're playing well. They're putting up points. They're just a lot of confidence with this team right now. So break it down here. Ravens, Bengals.
If the Bengals can put up some points this week, this game has some serious shootout potential because, like you mentioned, the Ravens, they need to win. So they're going to have all the motivation in the world. Lamar Jackson averaging 29 fantasy points over his last 4 games. So he looks like he's officially back. He's my favorite quarterback play of the week. You got to think he has the highest floor of anybody in play this week. And I like pairing him up with Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews in tournaments. You can always play Jackson just by himself as well. Mark Ingram inactive for the second straight week, but it's kind of been a 50-50 split between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So I will save those guys for the playoffs, especially in the 15-game slate. And then on Cincinnati side, if Tyler Boyd's out, I'll go right back to T. Higgins. He just looks so good. And the Ravens have a lot of big names in their secondary, but they have been beatable through the air over the last month. So I like T. Higgins quite a bit. And Giovanni Bernard, 26 and 23 touches over the last 2 games, 42 fantasy points during that stretch. I have a hard time clicking veteran names on teams with nothing to play for in Week 17. But if he's going to get the work, he's at least interesting.
I love clicking his name just to see that mustache on his DraftKings profile. I mean, that thing is awesome. But I agree. Price up to 5,400. I mean, he was 48 last week, I believe. So a tougher buy this week here in a much tougher matchup, obviously. But I agree on T. Higgins. The guy looks great, continues to get targets and get it done. Still only 5,000. We always joke about A.J. Green. But he did see 7 targets, Chop. I know you've written him off, but 3,900 here on A.J. Green. But we know that this is a Ravens onslaught. So, again, is it Lamar's, the running backs, the pass catchers, or a little bit of everything?
Oh, boy, that's another tough one. Obviously, Baltimore, you play all those main guys, J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, pick one. You can Lamar, Marquise, Andrews. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's the Cincy side you gotta kind of think about. Can they move the ball on a very motivated Baltimore team? This isn't the Houston Texans or so. I don't know. It's I guess I go back to T. Higgins though, and Giovanni Bernard's fine. Baltimore I did see Marlon Humphreys laying on the ground there in that game this past weekend. So if he's banged up or doesn't hurt, that certainly hurts that's their best secondary guy, period. So that could be a factor right there. And there's a piece of me that thinks that, we're all on these teams so far that should roll because they're so motivated, but that doesn't always happen. And a team like Cincinnati always comes in and makes for a real tough fight against this Baltimore team like that. A team like Cincinnati every Week 17 comes out and makes it really, really interesting. So maybe that's the case this year.
Yeah, I agree. And let's go to the betting market here. Ravens -13, 45 total. I'm going to lock in the Bengals here. I agree. I think they're playing extremely well. They have nothing to lose. And a game at home, I think they do make it difficult here. So not to say I don't have interest in the Ravens. I certainly do. But give me Cincinnati plus the 13. Chop, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's a good game. I think it's the 13 is about a little bit too much, so I'm taking the Bengals too.
Derek?
Oh, I can't have a three-leg parlay already. My hot take of the week, Baltimore covers the over by themselves.
Wow. Wow. That's 46 points for the Ravens. I like it. So clearly taking the over there for Noto. All right, let's move on. We talked about Pittsburgh. They are next up here going to Cleveland. We've already seen, the Ben news kind of reflected here in the line. Cleveland's up to a 10-point favorite here at home. So Pittsburgh pretty much happy with that 3 spot, it looks like. Cleveland, we know they need to win this game, or they have to have the Colts lose, or you get into a bunch of scenarios with losses and ties that we're not going to cover here. So basically, winning, you're in here for the Cleveland Browns. So injury-wise, it's the wide receivers for Cleveland. We'll see if they return to the lineup. I would expect them all to be back here, but something to keep an eye on here throughout the week. So, Chop, Cleveland looks like they should roll in this one if Pittsburgh is sitting guys out. But what do you think here? The 42 total, this one doesn't really jump off the page DFS-wise.
Yeah, the only thing I have any interest in this game is that Cleveland backfield, and that's it. I don't think Pittsburgh musters any offense at all, and I don't think Cleveland has any desire or need to pass the ball at all. So give me a bunch of Chubb and a little bit of Kareem Hunt.
All right, Derek, let's get over to you.
Pretty much agree with Chop. I like the Browns running game, and you can pair them up with the defense. They're playing at home against a backup quarterback, so I like that. As for the Steelers, I know it's easy to just say fade them, but if we get news that like they're resting a couple of their running backs or a couple of their receivers, maybe there's a value piece or two that you can plug in.
That's where I'm at. I think if Deontay Johnson sits, or 2 of those guys sit, obviously a Claypool will come into play, or a backup running back, like you said. Cleveland, definitely the running backs interest me. I don't know how much I want to have a Mayfield and the receivers, but Chubb, Hunt certainly in play here. So pretty much on the same page with you guys there. Derek, we got Cleveland -10, like I mentioned, and that total sitting at 42.5.
Oh, that's tough. Give me the under.
I'm going to go Pittsburgh here. I don't think they sit everybody out. So it's still a very good defensive team. I don't think they're just going to roll over and let Cleveland put 50 on them. So I'll take Pittsburgh, even with Mason Rudolph here. And isn't this a rematch of the helmet throwing incident, isn't it? We get him. Nice. We get him back in play. So maybe he's got a little revenge on his mind here. Again, I can't think of the guy's name for Garrett. But I'll take Pittsburgh with the 10 points. Chop.
Yeah, I was torn between Cleveland and the under, so I'll take the Cleveland side of it.
All right, let's move on to Chops. Dallas Cowboys, and a big game here. The winner of this one, if Philly can take out Washington, the winner of this game somehow wins the division. So that is the Sunday night game. So both of these teams squarely in play here. No major injuries here outside of Evan Ingram being listed as questionable. So, Chop, we'll get to you in a minute here. Somehow your team is still alive for the playoffs. But, Derek, let's go to you. This is another one of those kind of ugly games, middling totals. I'm more interested in the Dallas side. The receivers seem a little bit too cheap. We saw Zeke return to the lineup and kind of dominate carries, which I was surprised Tony Pollard wasn't more involved. But the receivers really where I'm looking here for the Cowboys. What do you got here, Dallas and the Giants?
I'm so glad the NFL started flexing these games, because we used to have these, games that could mean something, but that didn't end up meaning something because the morning games went a certain way or whatever it may be. But now pretty much any game that could mean something does mean something. So it's nice. These teams are both going to go all out. Agree with you. I do like the Dallas side quite a bit in this one. We've seen, Andy Dalton look reasonable, and Zeke Elliott actually looked pretty good last week. He should have 20-plus touches in this one. He's 6,400. The Giants 23rd in DVP against running backs. I know that's a pretty old stat, but I'll take my chances with Zeke in a must-win game, and don't mind going to Michael Gallup. He's looked really good with Andy Dalton under center. He actually leads the team in targets over the last few weeks. If James Bradbury is going to be on Amari Cooper, I think targets could funnel towards the other guys, and maybe even look at Dalton Schultz at 3K on DraftKings. Giants side, have a little bit of interest in the receivers, especially if Golden Tate's out again. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, they're both pretty cheap. Cowboys have been pretty good against tight ends, so not a ton of interest in Evan Ingram, but I think it's a good game.
All right, Chop, let's go to you. Like I said, your Cowboys still in the running here. So you're our Cowboys expert. Is it a Zeke game? Is it a receiver game? And then what are you doing on the Giants side?
Man, I don't think it's going to be a Zeke game. I don't think it's been a Zeke game all year long. So I'm not going that route. I think if they get there, it's because one or two of the wide receivers gets hot and gets. I mean, that's been their winning format here in recent weeks is the receiving game. One of them or two of them get hot and they come through. So I'm going that route. I think one of them has a good game. Amari's going to draw the tougher matchup. So, it would say either Gallup or CeeDee Lamb gets there, but I'm not on Elliott. And the Giants just don't look good on offense. So, and the Cowboys were terrible on defense early, but it's kind of leveled out a little bit. I know they're still bad, but they're not like historically bad like they looked like earlier in the year. So the Giants have looked terrible on offense recently, and I just don't know if that turns around this week. So I'm not super interested in those guys on the Giants side. It's tough to say that, but against the Dallas defense, but I'm not interested in them. So I'm on the Cowboys wide receivers, and the rest of it's kind of like very bland to me.
Yeah, pretty much with you. The Lambs, the Gallups are cheap. Cooper, even in a tough matchup, under 6K. I don't really have a ton of interest in the Giants either. Those receivers are cheap. Maybe if you're stacking Dallas, which I'm not going to do, maybe there's a run it back there, but pretty much all Dallas here for me. And Chop, I got to ask, who is the hated rival as a Cowboys fan? I know we're more into fantasy, kind of lose some of that fandom, but as a Cowboys fan, what team do you hate the most?
It always kind of it changes with the decades and the times. It's always different. So right now, without a doubt, is Philadelphia.
Okay, and I'm glad you said that, because is it going to be hard for you to cheer on the Eagles here, or is it just a matter of, hey, they win and my team's in the playoffs? So how is that difficult for you?
Oh no, this is so easy. This is such an easy cheer this week because not only would we love Philly to win so we can get in the playoffs if we were to win this Giants game, but also you get to rub it in their face that they screwed themselves on a higher draft pick by winning that last game. It's just like double the whammy on them. I would absolutely love Philly. I'm so rooting so hard for Philly.
It's a triple whammy because you can be like, thanks for getting us in the playoffs. I mean, they got you in there. So, yeah, just wondering. As a Packer fan, I can't cheer for the Bears ever. But if this was the scenario, I guess I would have to do it. So, betting wise, Chop, we got Dallas -2.5 here on the road, total at 45.
Oh yeah, man! I tell you what, I screwed myself last week when I did that hedge, that life hedge.
Trying to get cute.
I did, but I lost the bet. But I won in real life. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going Giants here because you know what? I'm either going to hit this game on the spread or my Cowboys are going to have a shot at the playoffs. So I'm going Giants.
You got that million. You can buy yourself a win here betting on the Giants. But I'm going to go on the other side here. I do think Dallas is the much better team, even in a road game here. I'll lay that 2.5 and go with the Cowboys. Derek, what do you got?
Yeah, I'll ride the momentum. Giants have lost 3 in a row. Cowboys have won 3 in a row. Give me Dallas.
All right, let's move on to Atlanta and Tampa Bay. We know Atlanta clearly out of things. Tampa Bay squarely in things. Really not much movement here for the Tampa Bay Bucks. So, but a fantasy-friendly game here. We got a 50.5 point total here. Tampa's clinched that spot. So, again, no motivation for them. So, about a 7-point favorite here. Julio Jones remains questionable. We've talked about it week in, week out for them shutting him down. They say if he's able to play, he's going to play. I don't see him out there, but something to keep an eye on. And then Ronald Jones on the Tampa side, still on the COVID-19 list as of this recording. So, Chop, this one, I mean, two teams that are kind of headed in opposite directions here. Tampa Bay just cruised in that game against Detroit, like we talked about. What do you got here in Week 17? Falcons, Buccaneers.
I think the Falcons are in play because I don't see why, you've been losing, you've been out of the playoffs, and you're still running Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley out there. So I think at the very least we get Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, and even some Hayden Hurst. So I think we're still in play with Atlanta in that passing game. It's Tampa you got to worry about. I certainly wouldn't be playing Tom Brady. I don't think I would play Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette, regardless of the scenario of when I'm were to sit out or not. But the Mike Evans, I think, is still in play, even a Chris Godwin, because last week they were up by, I don't know how many points in that fourth quarter, and Tom Brady had been on the sidelines for a quarter already, and they were still throwing the ball to Mike Evans. So I don't know if they have any very much desire to like give them a lot of rest in this game. So Mike Evans might be a guy, or Chris Godwin might be a guy that goes crazy in the last week of the season like this with absolutely nothing to play for. So those guys are in play, and the Atlanta side's in play.
Now, Tampa, real quick, I'm looking at the numbers here, and if they win, they secure the 5 spot, which would be a matchup with Dallas or Washington or the Giants, whoever it may be. So maybe a little bit more motivation there to get this one done and to lock that game in if they're even thinking that far ahead. You got to think every team in the NFC, that's the matchup they want, playing the NFC East winner. So a win would get them that 5 seed in that cake matchup. So motivation maybe, but I'm kind of with you. I think they go on cruise control here in this one. So Atlanta, agree. You know, Ridley's been a monster without Julio. If Julio's back, people may hesitate coming off the injury. So I do have some interest in some of those Atlanta receivers. The running backs I'm out on. Our boy Chop Gurley's on the bench now. We've seen Ito Smith kind of take over. So that's 2 in flux for me. Derek, let's go to you here. Falcons, Buccaneers.
I would be surprised if Julio plays this week, but they are saying there is a chance. So you never know what NFL coaches are going to do. But if he is out, yeah, you mentioned it, Calvin Ridley. In 7 games without Julio, he's averaged 11 targets, 114 yards, and 23 fantasy points per contest. He's pretty much a guy I would look to play for the Falcons. You know, Russell Gage has had a couple good games. Hayden Hurst has shown a little bit signs of life. But for me, it's just going to be Ridley. And agree with you guys on the Tampa side. You know, I like the passing attack. You know, Tom Brady looked really good. He's actually topped 32 fantasy points 4 times this season. Only a couple quarterbacks have done that. And I do like Mike Evans quite a bit, but he's up to 7,500 now. You know, all these guys were in the 5Ks, you know, a week or 2 ago, and now Godwin's 66, Antonio's 55. So it's getting tougher to stack them. And plus, you still have, you know, the inconsistency week to week. So probably not going to have a ton of exposure there. I'm fine with Fournette if Jones is out again, but even though I like the Buccaneers offense as a whole, I just don't know how much exposure I'll get to it.
All right, Noto, we got Buccaneers -6.5 here at home, 50.5 on the total.
I think Tampa takes care of business. Give me the favorite.
I'm taking the Bucs as well. I like what Atlanta's been doing. They've been playing hard. They've each and every week they went into Kansas City and played well, but I think Tampa wins this one by double digits. I'll agree and go with Tampa Bay. Chop.
I think Atlanta gives them a heck of a fight here and maybe even pulls the upset. So, I mean, I think Tampa really turned it off last week in the second half. I think they kind of are still going to go into this game on cruise control, and Atlanta's been playing better, so I'll take Atlanta.
All right, you're listening to the DFS OGs podcast here on RotoGrinders. We move on to the 4 o'clock window, a nice balance of games here. So we'll start out with my Green Bay Packers fighting for that number 1 seed, but got to go to Chicago on the road and get it done here. So very simple for Green Bay. They win. They lock in that 1 seed, which is super valuable this year with the 7 playoff teams and only 1 bye week. Everything would run through Lambeau. We know how well that team has been playing at home. Chicago, it's simple. Win and you're in, or you need an Arizona loss if you don't pull off a win. So, Noto, this one goes to you. Injuries look pretty light here. We're just watching Jamal Williams, who's questionable. We did see the emergence of A.J. Dillon onto the scene. So now a 3-headed backfield there in Green Bay. But tough road game here with a team playing with a lot of confidence in the Bears, putting up 30 points left and right. How do you see this one playing out, Green Bay and Chicago?
Yeah, love this game. I do think Green Bay is going to be able to put up a lot of points. They seem to do that in any matchup. So even if it's on the road and in a tough matchup, I like them to put up points. But they are expensive. Devontae Adams, probably the guy you want to pay up for if you are paying up for anyone on the Packers side. He has 15 touchdowns in his last 10 games. And, you know, Rodgers just looks to him so often anytime they get down near the red zone. You know, Aaron Jones, like you mentioned, I mean, he's fine. There are going to be those weeks where he breaks out. But with Jamal Williams potentially back, A.J. Dillon, I mean, that guy was built to run in the snow. And him trying to do the Lambeau leap was pretty good. I don't know if you guys saw that. Couldn't quite make it.
He needed a little bit of a boost, but he got up there.
Yeah, thankful for his teammate. He would have went 0 for 2 on the Lambeau leaps. But, yeah, so I like Devontae Adams. Opposite side, love everyone for the Bears. They're going to be going all out to win this game. Trubisky's looked pretty decent. He's still cheap. David Montgomery, at least 20 fantasy points in 5 straight games. He has 58 touches over the last 2 weeks. He's going to be involved in the running game, the passing game, and he just put up a big game against them a few weeks back. So love David Montgomery. I think he's still too cheap. He's only 7,700. He's getting the workload of like a 9K running back and good matchup. So like him. And then if you are playing the passing game, obviously you're going to go to Allen Robinson. He had a pretty nice game against Packers a few weeks back as well.
Yeah, I love Montgomery in this spot. The worry is Green Bay gets up big. It kind of takes him out of the game, but he can be involved in the passing game as well. But was very good against this team, like you mentioned. I think it was back in week 12. So just continues to get it done, and the price continues to stay where it's at. So Chop, a lot of different ways you can go in this game. So some of your favorites, maybe some guys you're staying away from, Green Bay and Chicago.
Yeah, what a great game here, man, with 2 motivated teams. I like to see it. That's what you like to see here. So, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, like I've said it before, one of the best connections I've ever seen. So you got to fire those guys up every week. Adams is a wide receiver 1 every single week this year. You gotta have him in there. I don't mind taking a shot on the backfield because I think the Bears defense is just a tad bit overrated. They've shown to be very susceptible in general. So, yeah, I think the Chicago offense is good enough to push it here, and they're going to need to they've got all the motivation in the world. That's the beauty of it. So, Allen Robinson, Mitch Trubisky, fire them up. David Montgomery, fire it up. I love it all. Cole Kmet, he looked better last week. So, I mean, and Jimmy Graham, they want to throw to their tight end. It's just that you're getting mixed signals here. Sometimes it's Graham, sometimes it's Kmet. Last week it was a lot of Jimmy Graham. This week I think maybe it's a little bit more Cole Kmet. So I don't mind him.
All right, Chop, we got Packers minus 5.5 here on the road. Total at 50.5.
Well, I'd really like to see make sure the weather's good here. But I think the over is my play. I think the offenses are really good and really motivated, and I think they move the ball.
I love the over as well. And obviously weather, I didn't get a chance to look ahead. As of now here in the Midwest, weather looks decent. I don't think there's any major storms here, but something to certainly take an eye on and watch as we head towards Sunday. But Chicago continues to score points. Green Bay's defense is what could hold them back in the playoffs here. And Noto, you mentioned this Green Bay offense is going to put up points. So over for me as well. Derek, what do you got?
Yep, 3 for 3.
All right, circle that one. So far we got 3 on the old parlay card. Moving on, New Orleans and Carolina. Carolina, we know, out of playoff contention. Christian McCaffrey remains questionable. Would surprise me to see him back in that lineup. New Orleans, a lot to play for here. If Green Bay were to slip up, New Orleans can jump up and grab that number 1 seed, which, again, holds a lot of value here. So New Orleans side, we know Michael Thomas and Traquan Smith both on the IR, and Alvin Kamara coming off an historic game, 6 touchdowns in that one, Chop. So what is that going to do to his ownership? Is that everyone going to run to Alvin Kamara here? We know we have a lot of stud running backs on this slate, so are you prioritizing that? The rest of the Saints offense, what are we doing? And then Carolina, it's those 3 receivers. Any of the 3 stand out above the rest?
The receivers, no. The Carolina side is no, it doesn't interest me a whole lot. I think it's a really motivated New Orleans team. They won't really know. They're going to come out there and play hardcore right away and for a good bit of time anyway. So I don't think there's any let up in their game. So I'm not super interested in the Carolina side. I mean, you could always take a stab at one of those guys, but nobody stands out above the other. I think New Orleans is good to roll here. I think Kamara comes out and gets his. I think Emmanuel Sanders has a good game. I think Drew Brees kind of rights the ship. He's been terrible, man, since he came back into the lineup. I think he gets a little bit better this week, and New Orleans goes out and steamrolls them because, you can't just scoreboard watch. I think Chicago will always be in that other game that they'll be having their eye on, so there's no way you let off the pedal regardless. So all steam ahead, man.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. And, those Carolina guys, you can throw a dart or a running back with a Moore and Anderson. Even a Samuel has shown some upside here. I'm pretty much out of Mike Davis in this matchup against New Orleans. But Saints side, Derek, that's where we have more interest here. Do we go right back to Kamara coming off that big game?
I certainly think you can. For me, it's probably going to depend on the value that opens up throughout the week. I do like Derrick Henry quite a bit, David Montgomery quite a bit. So he's expensive, but I do like Kamara. 59 fantasy points, just wild last week. And then I like Emmanuel Sanders too with Michael Thomas out. But every time I click on a Saints receiver, it feels like I'm setting myself up for disappointment. Just tired of watching Taysom Hill getting those touchdowns. But yeah, Sanders, he's fine. I agree with you guys on the Panthers side. Just don't love anyone. The Saints defense has been so good. They're third in DVOA against the runs or against the pass, second in DVOA against the run. Pretty much good against every position. So pretty much a fade for me on Carolina.
Yeah, I'm with you on those Saints receivers. I tried to make some Marquez Callaway work, and that didn't work so well. So frustrating. You think of Sanders, Jared Cook, guys would step up a little bit more, but maybe this is the spot here against Carolina. All right, Derek, we have Saints -6.5, and the total sitting at 48.
I'm going to take the under.
I like the under, too. The Saints defense is going to be fired up, and, again, they're a team that can slow things down if they want to and run the ball, not only with Kamara, but with Latavius Murray. So total seemed a little bit too high. I'll go under here as well. Chop.
Give me the Saints.
Saints for Chop. All right, moving on to Derek's Jacksonville Jaguars, future home of Trevor Lawrence after the Jets come out and win another game. Only the Jets can be so bad and screw all that up even. I mean, how are you so bad that you can't be bad? I mean, it's just mind-boggling. But Jags and Colts here. Obviously, the Colts, there's a lot of different scenarios. They can still win the division with a win or a tie. And a Tennessee loss, or can clinch a playoff berth. They will need some help. They're the ones on the outside looking in, so they have to win and get a loss from one of Baltimore, Cleveland, or Miami. So the Colts clearly motivated here, huge favorites at home. Do not see them getting tripped up here by the Jaguars. But injury-wise, Michael Pittman questionable on the Colts side, and James Robinson remains questionable on the Jags side. So Noto, this seems like a spot where we should love Jonathan Taylor. Is that the case here against your Jags?
It's hard not to. Is this similar to the Ravens where they have all the motivation in the world and an elite matchup, although the Colts are playing at home and indoors. So you don't have to worry about weather. You don't have to worry about anything. Taylor's had 22, 20, and 18 touches over the last 3 games. He's looked great. He's been involved in the passing game. They're giving him the ball near the goal line. So, yeah, I like Taylor quite a bit. I also like T.Y. Hilton. I think he can beat this secondary deep a bunch of times if Rivers can get him the ball. So I'll have a lot of shares of those two. I don't think I'll have any interest in a Rivers stack or anything like that. But we've seen a number of wide receiver running back combos from the same team in the Millie Maker recently. So, maybe you can play Hilton with Taylor. But I'll be making sure to have a lot of lineups with one or the other. Jag side, it's the most excited I've been for the Jags in years. So I certainly was happy that they didn't mess it up last week. There was a point in the first quarter where I was getting a little bit nervous. They looked pretty good against the Bears, but they ended up getting smoked. So that was nice. And as far as this week, I don't think you need to play anyone. Dare Ogunbowale ended up having a pretty nice game in James Robinson's absence, but I just don't think we're going to need it. Maybe G.J. Shark, maybe Laviska Shenault, but I just don't see the need for it in this slate.
Yeah, they're loaded up at pass catcher. You get a quarterback in there, and we'll see. They need some work on the defensive side of the ball as well, but Trevor Lawrence, a good start to any rebuild. Chop, same question for you. I know you've had your hesitations on Jonathan Taylor. Is this all systems go? Do we worry about Nyheim Hines? Do we worry about a blowout? Where do you come out here on Jonathan Taylor and the rest of this Colts offense?
Yeah. I think I think they all belong in your player pool, and my favorite is Jonathan Taylor. But man, they just ride the hot hand, man, more than any other team I've seen this year. So you always got to be careful. That's why Hines always stays in the player pool. But yeah, I'm with Derek as far as I think they roll. I don't think they roll up on Jacksonville. Jacksonville's done. They know what they've got in front of them. They need this loss, and they're not even going to try. Relatively speaking, in the NFL, everybody tries, but when a coach pulls the plug on it and then they put in the backups, there's nothing you can do about it. So I think the Colts roll. All those pieces on offense are fine. Jacksonville doesn't interest me at all because I don't know if we see a full game out of any James Robinson, any of them. They're not even that good anyway. And then you get this factored in. But yeah, Dan Bach tweeted something out this week about how he'd like to see he's a Jacksonville fan also, notorious. He'd like to see them snag Lawrence, and then with that next pick snag Kyle Pitts. Boy, that would be one hell of a duo to grab in the first round, man. That'd be instant offense in Jacksonville next year.
Yeah, the future's bright. I mean, you got to be excited about it. We'll see if Trevor Lawrence is excited about coming to Jacksonville, but good to have that locked in here in Week 17. All right, Chop, we have the Colts, big favorites as we'd expect. Number sitting at 14.5 and the total at 49.5.
I think the Colts roll them.
I think you get a spirited effort here out of the Jags. They can't blow the number one pick, so they really have nothing to lose here. And I just see a scenario. Indy gets up big, kind of lets off the gas. And we saw it last week with Pittsburgh. Indy was up huge, and not to say they let off the gas, but I think Jacksonville makes a run here at the end. So give me the 14.5. Noto.
I'll take the over thanks to, some late garbage time touchdowns from the Jaguars.
All right, next game, staying in that same division, we have Tennessee and Houston. Houston, we know, has been eliminated. Deshaun Watson and Duke Johnson listed as questionable. Watson sounds like he'll be fine. I don't think there's any worries there unless they decide they want to sit him down. The Titans, though, a lot to play for. They can win the division with a win or a Colts loss, or clinch a playoff berth with a loss by Baltimore or Miami. So another team with a lot to play for here in the Titans, a huge total game here. At 56.5, and Derrick Henry absolutely smashed his team the last two times they played. I believe he went over 200 yards, a couple touchdowns in that game, about 80 points scored in that game, Tennessee and Houston. So clearly a stackable game, Chop. Derrick Henry's got to be right at the top of the running back list this week.
So you have to refresh what you just said on that. Is there a possibility that Tennessee could be sitting there after the first quarter of this game and look up and see that they've already clinched? Is that a possibility?
So Baltimore loss or Miami loss?
Miami.
Both those teams are in the
early window.
Yes, they are. So let me double check that. That's what I got. But yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, things like that throw me off because if they look up and they get the word down from the press box that they've clinched, I don't think you'll see 30 carries out of Derrick Henry. So I'm very leery on that, but. Yeah, we'll double check that. I'm sure we'll have all that stuff by game time. But otherwise, yeah, it's full system to go on Derrick Henry and AJ Brown and Corey Davis. You fire them up, a team that needs to win, and against this defense, who I appreciate JJ Watt coming out and saying what he said about being a professional, but they're just not good, and they're just not going to be able to contain this offense if this offense keeps their first stringers out there for three quarters. So. Fire all those guys up on the Houston side. There's a piece of me that thinks that Deshaun and the receivers here come out and play well and really push the issue to try to knock off Tennessee and be the spoiler. I can see that. And then, it was a nice motivating speech from JJ. So that's there, man. So I think they're in play. And David Johnson, if you look up and we scratch Duke Johnson again and we scratch another running back and he gets all the carries, he's in play. Any running back is going to get that volume is in play. So, but my preference here would be Deshaun and Cooks on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the scenarios again, and that's the scenario. So they win the division. Indy loses, they win the division, or Ravens or Miami loss clinches a berth. So you're right. That's something to keep an eye on, and obviously you have to plan in advance for that. So Baltimore should cruise here, but Miami, it's not a given that they're gonna go in and beat Buffalo. So
yeah, I'll throw this out there too. And this is, man, I hate doing this during football because I like sitting down watching the red zone. I don't want to have to tinker after that noon lock, right? But in a week like this, man, if you look and you're seeing, the Titans, you see that they've clinched after those noon games and you've got a chance to get Henry out of your lineup, gee, by all means, get him out and go Aaron Jones or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, that's the Miami game's what you're going to want to keep an eye on. I mean, it would shock me. I mean, we picked Cincinnati, or some of us picked Cincinnati. To see them win that game, I think they can compete. But, again, it wouldn't surprise me to see Buffalo just beat Miami and eliminate them. So, Good call there, Chop. So let's get to the bet. No, we got to get over to Derek here. Tennessee and Houston.
I'm glad we're covering all the different angles because this is the week more than any where, it just matters about motivation and all that stuff more than any other. I like the idea of, playing Henry and leaving $100 in your lineup, at least on DraftKings. Then you can just pivot right to Kamara if the Titans don't end up having a lot to play for. But if they do, it's hard not to like Henry. Titans bottom 5 in pretty much every rushing category so far this season, and Tennessee, great offensive line. Don't mind Brown. Corey Davis put up a snowflake for me in the snow last week. Put up a goose egg. That was pretty bad. I think that was the first time I played him all season too.
You're the guy. You're
the guy
that
did it,
Corey Davis was. All right, stay away here. I think he can bounce back here.
Yeah, I think he bounced back. And I love the Texans. If Watson's out there, you got to think, they'll play the role of spoiler. And David Johnson, if Duke is out again, 27 and 32 fantasy points the last 2 weeks. Typically, we see these veteran running backs, trail downwards toward the end of the season. But he has got a pep in his step. He looks pretty good out there. So don't mind going to Dave Johnson. Brandon Cooks, Kiki QT. And this is finally the week Jordan Akins gets a touchdown.
Oh, old Stonehand's going to reel one in, huh? I mean, as good as Tennessee's offense is, the defense is equally as bad. So you always want some exposure to that other offense. So I agree. David Johnson looked good. We kind of wrote him off, but maybe those few weeks off kind of refreshed him, and a lot of interest here in this entire game. But as far as Tennessee, I love that call, Chop, watching Miami and Baltimore, the teams you're going to want to keep an eye on there in that early window. All right, Derek, we have Titans minus 7.5 here on the road, and I believe the highest total we have on the board here, 56.5.
Yeah, you get the hook. You get a home team in the division rivalry. Give me the Texans.
I hate going over on the highest total, but I think we get some fireworks in this game. I mentioned the last one almost hit 80, so I'll go over to 56.5. Chop.
Give me Houston here.
All right, next game, Chargers and Chiefs. This one's very simple. The Chargers are out of it. The Chiefs are locked in, and the spread kind of reflects that we're going to get Chad Henne and the rest of the backups here for the Kansas City Chiefs. So Chargers actually favored by 3.5 here going into Kansas City. So injuries, we got Keenan Allen questionable, Hunter Henry on the COVID-19 list. We'll see if he returns. And then KC, you're going to have to keep an eye on it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire doubtful. Sammy Watkins questionable, but would shock me to see any of these guys even touch the field. Maybe they're out there for a little bit, but you got to think that this is a scenario where these guys all sit. So, Derek, it's a question of, do we have interest in Chad Henne and some of these backups here in this system? Can they do enough to be of interest in DFS? And then the Chargers, been a great season by Justin Herbert and company. The wins certainly aren't there, but the fantasy points, the stats have been good. So, your thoughts here, Chargers and Chiefs?
For the Chiefs, I kind of hope, we get word that a lot of these guys are going to sit. The Chiefs, they have no reason to want to lose this game, and all these backups are going to be excited, to get some playing time. They're going to want to go out and put some good play on film. And so I like quite a bit of these guys if they end up being out. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire's out, if Le'Veon Bell's out, then you can look at the running backs. If any of the receivers out, wouldn't mind some Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson. So they're playing at home. It's a good matchup. I'll just take a wait-and-see approach, see who's active, and then, kind of load up on the value plays if there are any. Chargers side, they could be fighting for their head coach, give him a fighting chance of keeping his job. We talked about it a little bit the last couple of weeks, but if they win this, that's 4 in a row, and they'll end with a pretty decent record, even though it should be a lot better. I just don't know who I want to target here. If Keenan Allen's out, the passing attack becomes a little bit more interesting, but Austin Eckler, he's in a 3-way timeshare at this point, and he's kind of getting bailed out by receptions and touchdowns. And if those don't come this week, then it does worry me a little bit at his price point.
Yeah, I agree completely. The Chiefs, I think there's going to be a lot of value, so it's just keeping an eye on who's in, who's out. Even a guy like Byron Pringle, a guy that has flashed in spots, I really like here. It's a question of can we trust and can we play Chad Henne at 5,100? The Chargers side, it's going to be as simple for me as seeing who's in and who's out on the Chiefs defense. And not to say they have any, outside of Jones, there's not a lot of studs on that defense. Maybe the Honey Badger, you still put in that category, but the Chargers will be a wait and see here as well to see what kind of defense they're going up against. So, Chop, Chiefs backups, yes or no? And then Chargers side of things, what are we doing there?
Chiefs backups, the only, like you said, the receivers. I'm looking at the receivers. If we get Tyreek and Sammy out of this game and Kelsey out of this game, then yeah, guys like Pringle and Hardman definitely move up on my radar, but don't want the running backs, and I don't want Chad Henne if he's the guy. So just the receivers, I'm looking for some scratches. Otherwise, I don't want any part of that. The Chargers, man, they just haven't. Herbert's not looked good for a couple weeks in a row now. Yeah, like you said, I'm curious on the defense. Are they going to rest some guys? If so, Herbert could slice right through them. But then you got to wonder about his receivers and who's going to be active right there. So again, that's going to be a tough one. But my lean my lean is Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson as Herbert's number 1 and number 2 in this game. So that's the way I'm going right now. And like Derek said, Eckler gets bailed out because of the receptions, but he's not the workhorse there. So I don't think I want him in this game.
Yeah, I mean, when Kalen Balaj is getting carries, that's no good. So I like those Chargers receivers you named, though. That Johnson kid, I think, has some serious potential. Guyton, we know is a big play waiting to happen. So don't hate those calls at all. All right, Chop, we got Chargers minus 3.5 here, road favorites, 44 on that total.
Oh, man. They just had to throw that little hook in there. But, yeah, I really think Kansas City – oh, man. Tough part is they get a bye week. So maybe Andy wants to go out there and get them a good, nice first half, and they run up a big score in the first half. I don't know. So I'm going to take the Chargers, I guess.
I'm going to go the over here for what you just said. I mean, you could still see a few series of this guy. Even if not, I still think Kansas City offense can score some points. Even if it's Darrell Williams or Darwin Thompson, Henne is not new to this game. So I think there can be enough points in this game to cruise by that 44. Derek.
Wasn't sure where I was going to land, but Beer, you made a good case. Give me the over.
All right, moving on. Two teams that are out of it here, the Raiders and the Broncos. Raiders small favorites here heading to Denver. No injuries outside of Phillip Lindsay, who was placed on IR. So, Chop, this one goes to you. These teams won't appear on any of the playoff articles, things like that, but we have a big total here. We have a close spread. We have a Raiders offense that has been good in spots. Guys like Nelson Aguilar, Darren Waller putting up numbers. So, this game interests me a lot, more so on the Raiders side of things. But what do you see in here, Raiders and Broncos?
Yeah, having been eliminated last week in the way they were, the Raiders, I would think that people would think the tendency is that they're just going to kind of mail it in this week, but they're 7-8, and I don't know why, but there is something to finishing a season like 500 or better rather than 7-9. I think there's something to that, and they really want to do that. And the coach is a motivating coach, and so I think we see a pretty good game out of the Raiders. So I like Carr, like Jacobs, like Aguilar and Waller. I'll go with all those guys. They're fine. And then I think Denver's still, fighting for getting better. Just they're playing to get better. That's what they've done for most of the year. And so Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy, I think they're fine. Noah Fant. I will not be playing Melvin Gordon again. I can pass on that guy, but I like Drew Lock and those two big pass catchers. And in fact, even though Jerry Judy's had a really disappointing year, I think he may break out here in this game.
Yeah, he really has. I had higher expectations for him, especially with Sutton out. You thought he would kind of emerge there, but it was really Tim Patrick who kind of emerged on the scene and put up the numbers here. So, Derek, let's go over to you. Same questions. I'm interested in the Raiders offense. Talk me off the ledge here.
Oh, man. Yeah, I like the Raiders offense, but I'm still mad that Josh Jacobs slid down at the 1-yard line. All I needed was that touchdown in my Saturday slate to have a really nice day, and slid down, ended up kicking the field goal, and then they ended up losing. So a little bit of justice there. I was kind of happy to see them lose after that. But, I mean, 6,200, we've been paying $7K plus for him. It's a great matchup. Denver's 25th in DVOA against the run. So I like that. And I believe Denver's still without their top 4 or 5 cornerbacks. So it could be a good spot to go to Nelson Aguilar. You can always play Darren Waller as well. Denver side, I kind of agree with you guys. I mean, Melvin Gordon's going to get the work, but I have more interest in the passing game. So, yeah, give me Patrick, a little bit of Jeudy, and a little bit of Noah Fant.
All right, Noto, we got Raiders -2, 50.5 on the total.
I'll take Yeah, I like Chop's 8-8 argument. Give me the Raiders.
I'm going Raiders as well. I mean, Gruden doesn't want to be the Jeff Fisher, the old 7-9. That's a good call. So I like the Raiders in DFS. I like them here minus the 2. Chop, what do you got?
I'm trying to make up ground on Noto, and he's stealing my thunder, man. I mean, I like the Raiders too, so I can't not go Raiders.
All right, 2 games left here to make up that ground. We'll go to an interesting one here. Cardinals, Rams, very simple. Whoever wins is in the playoff. The problem is the quarterback position for these 2 teams. We know Kyler Murray questionable, Hopkins questionable as well, but the Rams will be without Jared Goff. So, Chop, my question is, who in the hell is John Wolford? I mean, this is their starter. You're a college football expert, so give us a little scouting report there. We know the running backs, Darrell Henderson, doubtful for this one. Cam Akers may return here, but he's questionable as well. But, Chop, I'm going to start with you here. Just give me something here on John Wolford, because I saw that name. I'm pretty plugged in. A lot of dynasty leagues, things like that. This guy, I'm scratching my head. I don't even know who this guy is.
You know, without doing a quick Google search, I'm going to say that this was I think the Wake Forest quarterback for a while.
I'll do the Google search here.
Do the Google search. Make sure I got the right guy, but I think he was a Wake Forest quarterback. And if that's the case, I didn't think he was that great in college, but I keep hearing the AAF thing, so maybe he did really well in the AAF for a while. But you know what? Jared Goff wasn't that good, so I don't expect John Wolford to step. Like if this was Jared Goff, I would be very hesitant to play Jared Goff against the Cardinals in DFS this week. So I don't think I want his backup in DFS. And I certainly don't want to mess around with the backfield, even though there could or could not be some injuries there. I don't. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, you can keep those guys in play. But I think the offense kind of struggles in this game. That's just my opinion. I think the defense is really good. It's going to make things hard on Arizona, but Kyler Murray is a different kind of a guy. So Kyler Murray can get out there and rush and get it done. DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, they've got a tough matchup this week, so I think Murray relies on his legs more. And then I think Kenyon Drake is kind of an under-the-radar guy, never gets the ownership on a main slate, and I think this could be a good week for Kenyon Drake.
Wake Forest, Chop, you nailed it here for old John Wolford, and led the AAF in passing touchdowns. So didn't get ton into the AAF. I guess that's why I never heard of this guy, but put some decent numbers on the board in college. But I agree. If this was Goff, I don't want to play him. So I'm definitely not, even at a discount, playing John Wolford here. So, Derek, let's go to you here. It should be a fun game to watch, but how much exposure do we want in our DFS lineups?
Very little. I think I'm going to be fading the Cardinals as a whole. You know, Kyler Murray's dealing with a leg injury. If that limits his rushing upside, I just don't know if he's going to be able to get it done through the air against his defense. Hopkins going up against Jalen Ramsey. That's a tough matchup. I think there are better spends at wide receiver. Not that he can't win that matchup, but I don't think you need him. And then the Rams side, I kind of think Cam Akers is still going to be out. I mean, high ankle sprains typically take a couple weeks. We know Darrell Henderson's already at least doubtful. He's probably going to sit. So Malcolm Brown at 4,300. We know he's a good pass catching back. The quarterback's going to want to check it down as often as he can. So I think Malcolm Brown is going to be really interesting this week.
All right, we don't have a total on this game because of the injuries, but I got Rams minus 1.5. I was able to pull that out. So Derek, just a spread pick here.
Oh man, it's ugly, but give me the Rams. I think they find a way to get it done.
Let's go to Chop. I'm torn on this one.
Man, you know, he reminded me of that Kyler Murray laying on the ground last week. I forgot about that. Oh man, if he can't run, then they're in big trouble on offense. So I guess I have to go with old John Wolford here and take the Rams, man. Even though I need to make up ground on Derek, I'm not going to be able to do it here.
I got to make up serious ground, so I can do it. I got to go Cardinals. I don't know. I'll just go the opposite just to try to make up some ground. But don't love either side here. If they're without Kyler, that's going to be trouble, or if he can't run like you mentioned. So one to keep an eye on. All right, let's wrap things up here. Long week 17, I should say. Appreciate you guys staying tuned in here. Last game, Seattle and San Francisco. San Fran eliminated Seattle. Still has a shot at the number 1 seed. They would obviously need both Green Bay and New Orleans to lose, but with all of them being in the same window, it's a team that will be motivated here. So no injuries on the Seattle side. We get another week of C.J. Beathard for San Francisco. No Brandon Ayuk, no Deebo Samuel. Derek, we'll go to you to wrap things up. Seattle and San Francisco.
I don't have a ton of interest in Seattle side. I think they kind of just grind this one out, pick up the win, and move on. You could always go with DK Metcalf as a one-off. Certainly don't mind that, but they have been running the ball a lot more recently. Niners side, if Mostert, I think Mostert's out already, but Jeff Wilson Jr. looked great last week. I'll go right back to the well if he's end up, going to be low owned, even in a tough matchup against the Seahawks. And then you can beat him through the air. So if you want to take a few shots on Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, don't mind that.
You're accurate on Mostert. He is on the IR. Brandon Ayuk is out, so they're down a couple pass catchers. So you're down to Kendrick Bourne, Richie James, George Kittle. We'll see if he plays, but I'm basically with you. I don't have a ton of interest in this game. I do like some Jeff Wilson, more so on FanDuel, just for that touchdown upside, but he certainly looked good in that game against Arizona. Chop, wrap us up here, Week 17, Seattle, San Francisco.
Yeah, if we get word that they're gonna up Kittle snap counts a little bit, I have interest in Kittle as the only pass catcher there left that's even viable for me. And Jeff Wilson looked good, like you guys said, but it is kind of a tough matchup. So, but Wilson, Kittle are the two guys on that side I could see. On the flip side, curious about how Seattle treats this. Their real motivation here, I don't know. So, but just because these guys are so explosive, DK Metcalf is always going to be there. So Metcalf and Chris Carson are the two guys I'm targeting on Seattle.
All right, last betting pick here, Chop. Seattle -5.5, total at 46.
Yeah, just because they're at home and I know they really want to win a division game like this. I'll take San Francisco.
I will go the under in this game. It's kind of a middling total, but I think this one could be ugly. I'll go under 46. Derek.
I'll go Seattle. So we have three different.
All right. So as far as the betting card, I have us down for the Raiders -2, the over in the Green Bay Chicago game, over 50.5. Miami. Now that one we'll see. We're getting different lines. We have it Miami +4.5. So if you can grab that, do that. And the Jets +3 at New England. So 1, 2, 3, 4-teamer for the old parlay card this week. And that will wrap up Week 17, guys. Final thoughts here on football. We obviously have some news. We'll get to that here momentarily, but let's wrap up Week 17 with any, if you got a stack, a favorite play, give it. If not, just a kind of a final thought here on the slate. Derek, we'll start with you.
My thoughts would be the expensive guys in your lineups, make sure they have something to play for. You can always find value on the teams that have nothing to play for. Keep your eye on the news throughout the week. A lot of what we said in this pod will probably change over the next 4 or 5 days. So definitely keep an eye on that. And, thanks for joining us throughout the season. And are we going to do a playoff pod?
We are. That's some breaking news. We got a couple of announcements. So we will be doing a couple playoff pods. I think the first 2 weeks of the playoffs, it kind of gets dicey after that. Not as much to talk about. And I know there's some showdown videos and things like that we will do, or Chop will do when we get to the NFC AFC championships. But first 2 rounds of the playoffs, the OG's got your back. We'll be here breaking everything down. So yes, we have that to look forward to. Chop, final thoughts on the football here, Week 17.
Yeah, I like to target guys who have something to play for, and that's going to make up the majority of my rosters. But yeah, there's going to be crazy players that have absurd point totals this week. So you've got to be open to rostering some really weird names. Just keep your ears open to see who sits and who doesn't. But yeah, you've got to keep those guys on your radar.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great week to be a sleuth, to be tuned in to beat writers and any little nuggets that you can gather. And obviously the team over at RotoGrinders, we're going to help you out as much as we can. But the more you can dig up on some of these guys and some of these names that you may not either have heard of or familiar with or feel uncomfortable playing, these are the kind of plays in Week 17 that can make a difference. So thank you to everybody for tuning in, for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you. And without further ado, let's get to our breaking news. I know we've been talking about it for weeks. I know all three of us and the team over at RotoGrinders super excited about this. And again, this goes to you guys for all your views and listening to the show. If it wasn't for that, this doesn't happen. But the OGs are not going to end here with football season. Normally, football's over. We kind of go into hibernation and we appear the next season breaking down everything football. But we are going to expand our reach into the NBA, which all three of us very big fans of and play a ton. I know Derek's very involved. Chop as well in the projections at RotoGrinders. Well, we are going to do a little invasion of Grinders Live, and that's right. We're going to have OG's night every Wednesday night on RotoGrinders starting next Wednesday, January 6th. We will be doing a 1-hour show breaking down the NBA for that night's slate. So I know all of us very excited about this. Can't wait to continue working with these guys, two of my favorites in the industry. But stay tuned for that January 6th and following every Wednesday night breaking down NBA. Dean, slide over. The OGs are taking over that Wednesday night spot. So guys, anything you want to hit on that before we get out of here for week 17? Chop.
I'm stoked, man, that we get to do some NBA and we get to do it together. You know, number one, it's just is always great to pick y'all's brain. And Derek writes like one of the best NBA articles every day out there. So we get to pick his brain that once a week, every week on the Grinders Live. So that's always good. And then number two, this is at least one day out of the week I don't have to do a show with Dean. This is phenomenal stuff, man.
Truly good news. Derek, thoughts here on the NBA stuff?
You know, after each NFL season, we always think they're going to kick us to the can. I think this year, the preview for the NFL, we weren't even mentioned with all the other videos and podcasts. So it turns out we get promoted. So the more OGs, the better. Pumped to be doing it with you guys. And, yeah, breaking down some basketball. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we want to make it an interactive show, and so we'll have some different ideas. You guys have anything you'd like to see, hit me up, send me a message on RotoGrinders or on Twitter. But we want to have some fun with it, mix in some life stuff like we always do, and but mainly get you the information you need there in the NBA on Wednesday night. So, guys, before we get out of here, any big plans for New Year's? Derek?
I hope to not leave my house.
Besides mimosa shots and in bed by 7. I mean, that sounds like a good day. But, yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. Probably hang out with the kids. The kids, we got them this VR thing. What the hell's that thing called? The Quest 2? I'm telling you, man, I never have done any VR. This thing's pretty impressive. Now, there was one that had a roller coaster, and your boy started getting nauseous. So stay away from the roller coasters. But some of the other stuff was pretty cool. So hang out, play that, play some Nintendo Switch, and ring in 2021. Chop, what's the big plans for the new year?
Oh, we've picked up some fireworks already. We'll do some fireworks with the kids here at the house, and that's about it. We're not going to go anywhere or do anything crazy, but plan to enjoy a nice little peaceful evening of some early fireworks here in San Antonio.
All right, don't pull a Jason Pierre-Paul on his Chop.
Man, no way.
You need them digits, man.
No chance that's happening to me.
Need them digits, so keep those intact. But I just want to say again, thank you to you guys. Without the listeners and your feedback and listening to the show, that doesn't happen. So you guys carried the show. We have fun every week, getting on here talking football and looking forward to doing some playoff talk. Always fun talking playoff football. And again, RotoGrinders every Wednesday night, 5:30 to 6:30, starting Wednesday, January 6th. So for Notorious, for Head Shopper, I am Beer, saying salut. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Best of luck this week, and we'll see you right back here next week. Thank you for listening, guys, and good luck.